I'll give the floor to Mr. Agnew.
Thank you. Two fascinating presentations. Some quick questions. First of all, to the man from Israel. With only 30 millimetres of rain a year, where do you get the extra water from to get going? Do you desalinate from the Mediterranean? I'm intrigued to know where the water actually comes from. I know you use it efficiently once you've got it. You've got some remarkably high-yielding cows, and we have found in the United Kingdom that if you keep going down the route of milk production, the cows can suffer in conformation, foot problems, not very good carcass value. Do you have these problems, or do you just ignore them? And I was very interested to hear what you said about gene editing. You're not going down the GMO route because of resistance here, but I should warn you that this committee, there are people here who want to regard gene editing as tar it with the same brush, if you like, as GMO and just stop the whole thing. On to the other speaker, a very interesting presentation. In Africa, are you using the carob tree as the tree between the crops? I'm just interested to know that. Obviously, in Northern Europe, we couldn't all go down the apple route for agroforestry because there's a limit to the market of apples. What could we do? And I'm thinking that we're very short of protein. We import that, but then there's a question of how do you harvest these protein crops from the trees? I spent some time 40 years ago with a man called Sholto Douglas, who did a lot of forest farming in Africa. And he felt the big problem was to try and it was the initial getting it going. That was the difficulty. And finally, I thought you made a very good point about the ripening crop. It's not photosynthesizing. I had never thought about that before. Thank you.
I was asked where does the water come from in the desert if we have only 30 millimeters. Israel is #1 in the world in desalination of water. In the past, we did not have water and we suffered badly, but through desalination techniques, as long as there water in the Mediterranean Sea, we think that we are on the safe side. In terms of the desert, in the past, Israel constructed a pipe all the way from the northern part of Israel to the desert in order to supply water there. Today we can use some of the water which exists in the desert as saline water and again desalinate it and use it for agriculture. Of course we have to be careful because by using desalinated water we also take out some of the nutrients that the plants need, and in order to overcome that what we usually do is mix the water, both the groundwater and the desalinated water, in order to achieve a situation by which we don't harm the plants.
Mr. Agnew, are we using carob trees? We are using hundreds of trees. We are checking thousands of potential species, and depending on where we are in the world, there will be complex mixtures of these trees that are being used. But yes, most certainly we're using carob trees. We're also interested in gene editing. We run something called the African Orphan Crops Consortium, where we are actually sequencing over 130 neglected African crops to see how we can accelerate their domestication when they have not yet been domesticated and their improvement when they have been. Finally, the question on agroforestry systems in the north. Well, it so happens that Europe's largest agroforestry system is the reindeer herding system in northern Scandinavia and northern Russia, where you have a mixture of animals and trees that are helping each other out. In the case of the UK, I'm aware that silvopastoral systems in Scotland are quite popular and quite productive. So there you would tend to use animals rather than crops in those systems. Finally, yes, getting it going is the hard bit. It's a brand new technology. It's an extremely traditional technology, but in the context of today's agriculture, for most farmers, it is a brand new technology. They have no experience. Their neighbors have no experience. Rural advisory services have no experience. And it takes some guts to start with something that can be risky if you make a mistake, but that holds so much promise.